One of the biggest stumbling blocks to Brexit has been the all-important issue of Northern Ireland. 20 years ago, the Good Friday Agreement put an end to decades of sectarian violence there, which killed more than 3,500 people. Today, with Brexit around the corner and fears of a hard UK-Irish border returning to the island of Ireland, that hard-won peace is under threat. Could Brexit really bring about a return of the Northern Irish conflict and maybe even a breakup of the UK? Martina Anderson was a member of the IRA who was freed from prison as a result of the Good Friday Agreement and is now a member of the European Parliament for the Sinn Fein political party. She joins me from Strasbourg. Martina Anderson, thanks for joining me on UpFront.
You're welcome.
Your political party, Sinn Fein, played a critical role in the resolution of the Northern Irish conflict. You signed up to the Good Friday Agreement. You supported the laying down of arms on all sides. How worried are you that Brexit, whether a no-deal Brexit or even a Brexit under the terms of this deal proposed by Boris Johnson making its way through Parliament, how worried are you that Brexit could lead to a return of violence in your part of the world?
It's important to state at the outset that the war is over. Conflict is over, and the people of Ireland want to continue on the pathway that we have embarked on 21 years ago. Wars are terrible things, and it's how you get out of it, how you build conflict resolution. But there is one thing for sure, that Brexit is totally incompatible with the Good Friday Agreement. And the people of Ireland will not allow the British establishment to have us as collateral damage.
But when you say it's totally incompatible with Brexit, is that all forms of Brexit? Is that a no-deal Brexit which brings back a hard border between the Republic of Ireland and Northern Ireland? Or is it this Boris Johnson Brexit, which Parliament this week voted on, which puts the border in the sea and avoids some of the hard border issues, allegedly?
Well, there is no good Brexit, but a crash-out Brexit is the worst Brexit of all. But what we have been working to ensure that there would never be a return to a harder border in Ireland, because the border is already too hard in Ireland.
And do you think that hard border is coming back now? I'm wondering, given this week's events, what do you now think is going to happen? Because on the one hand, you have some hard Brexiters in the UK Parliament saying, actually, we could still get a no-deal Brexit by the end of 2020. And you yourself said back in August to Boris Johnson, when you say you don't want a hard border, we don't believe you. So do you believe him now?
Well, it's not about believing Boris Johnson, I can assure you of that. Of course, there could be a crash-out Brexit, and that would be the worst Brexit of all. But that said, where we are at the moment, there was a vote in Westminster, and the majority of the MPs in that House of Chaos, formerly known as the House of Commons, actually voted for the EU British withdrawal from the EU. Now, what they didn't vote for, or what they didn't support, was the time frame as to how long it would take for that to be concluded. So we know for the very first time in that House of Chaos there has been a vote that has supported that deal. So if that deal was to be implemented, then this deal that has been agreed comes in immediately after the transition period. And it's just for us to understand, and for your listeners to understand, the backstop was only going to be applied unless and until it was needed, whereas this deal now comes entry into force immediately after the transition period. So we have gone from something that was somewhat temporary in the backstop to a semi-permanent arrangement.
The former chief British negotiator in Northern Ireland, Jonathan Powell, recently wrote, Mr. Johnson and Brexit may have done more for a united Ireland than the IRA ever did. Not that many people were talking about Irish reunification back before 2016. Now, post the Brexit referendum, the polls suggest a lot more people are. Could Brexit really provide a backdoor route for getting what you and your party have always wanted, a united Ireland?
Well, of course, people in Sinn Fein and within the Republican family, who represent now the majority of the people in the north of Ireland, have been talking about Irish reunification, and someone like myself all of my adult life. That said, Brexit has actually acted as an accelerant to that conversation, because people are looking at the Good Friday Agreement and understand the provision in the Good Friday Agreement that we all voted for. Well, I didn't, I was in prison, but people from my tradition voted for it because of the provision in the agreement that stated that the British Secretary of State had the discretion and an obligation to bring about a unity referendum in Ireland when it appeared likely that the majority of the people in the north of Ireland consented to Irish reunification. Now that was a big strategic swallow for us as Irish Republicans who believe in the sovereignty of the whole of the island. But opinion poll after opinion poll, the last one, for instance, Lord Ashcroft, shows that there is a growing majority of people now in the north of Ireland.
It doesn't quite show a growing majority.
Within the unionist community.
It shows 51% of people in Northern Ireland support independence, 49% support reunification, 49% don't. That's within the margin of error. That's basically a statistical tie.
Well, of course it's within the margin of error, but as you would know, 52% is dragging the people of Britain out of the EU, and I believe it was like 51% in America that got your president elected. So, based on statistics, and that's all we can go with at the moment in terms of
it's a fair point you make. 51% is a majority. What I'm saying is, in such a tense place, with a history of violence, such a tense place where you want consent to make big decisions. You can't blame your unionist opponents like the DUP, the Democratic Unionist Party, for being against this Brexit deal, because they still have to represent half or almost half the people in that part of the world who don't want a united Ireland.
The DUP do not represent 50% of the people in the north of Ireland. The DUP represent less than 30% of the people in the north of Ireland. So the DUP do not speak for the majority of the people in the north of Ireland. What I'm trying to explain to you at this moment in time, universities, civic society, lawyers, and many, many others are involved in a calm and a reasonable conversation about planning and preparing for constitutional change in Ireland. Let me just explain to you that in the north of Ireland and in Ireland, people realise that their EU rights, of which they value, their EU citizenship, of which they value, and some like myself who critically engage with the EU and know it needs to be reformed, but we know that there is a democratic pathway back into the EU. And let us all recall that on the 29th of April 2017, when Michel Barnier, the chief negotiator, was given his mandate, that the European Council statement of that day said that in the event of Irish reunification, the whole of Ireland will remain in the EU. Only a few weeks ago, we had President Macron standing beside Boris Johnson, and he said that the solution to the Brexit problem is Irish reunification. But of course, it is up to the people of Ireland.
If, as you suggest, the polls are moving in your direction, the Europeans are on board for a unity referendum, and you end up getting a united Ireland off the back of Brexit, isn't it an irony that you'll have Boris Johnson to thank for that?
No, the only people we will have to thank for that are ourselves. It will be the people of Ireland.
Hold on, you just said you all voted against Brexit, but Brexit might lead to the reunification of Ireland. As a result of something you voted against, you're going to get something you want. That's an irony, is it not?
Irish people in the north of Ireland voted to remain in the EU, and under the Good Friday Agreement we have a democratically endorsed pathway back into the EU, and we would like the people of America, the people of the world to understand that we are the reasonable people in the room, and we're having very good informed conversations about constitutional change in Ireland.
Martina Anderson, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you so much for joining me on UpFront.
Thank you very much.
That's our show. UpFront will be back next week.